Day 133, and last week I mentioned a situation that was kind of materializing with my daughter and I waiting for the bus at the bottom of our driveway, as we had been for the last, year and a half since we moved into our new residence. And it's kind of been like this golden time that we have, like 5 or 10 minutes together, talking about, the upcoming day, and sometimes just looking at the birds and the trees and the sky. But it's a time that we enjoyed together. And so it's kind of like started being invaded. Okay, we did not ask for the situation. It kind of just happened where her friend across the street and her stepfather just started coming over each morning. And they kind of said something to my wife, but they never cleared it with me. They never, cleared it with Peyton. They just started like coming over every single day, as I talked about. And so I was prepared to handle the situation. And I felt like it called for me to be assertive. This is where I need to let my subconscious know that, hey, this is not something I want in my experience. And I'm not just going to take it and sit by and watch this happen when it's not something that I asked for or that I want. In the past, I would have just accepted it. And so I was fully prepared to have the conversation, and I had told my subconscious knew I was fully prepared to have the conversation. I called my wife that day after I made the video. I asked her, or maybe before I made the video, but I asked her for his phone number because I wanted to call him and talk to him about the situation nicely. It wasn't going to be, it's not, he's also here, just doing the best he can do. He's a new stepfather. They just moved to the area, so he's just trying to make friends. And that's another thing, okay, that you can kind of talk yourself into, is you can, kind of talk yourself into feeling sorry for somebody. Like, oh, he's new, like, let me just be nice and just not say anything and just kind of let this happen. And it's the nice thing to do, right? I mean, that's what we've been taught. But at the same time, it's not what I want. Okay, I want something different. And so when you want something different than what you're getting, you have to have tough conversations. You have to be assertive in certain situations. And so I called my wife. I asked her to send me his number, and I was fully prepared to talk to him. And so, I was waiting, 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 and she got home. I said, "Hey, you never sent me his number." And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, I want to talk to you about that." And so Peyton was there, and I was like, "Okay, I guess we're gonna have this conversation later." And so I think that was Friday night. It was Friday night or Saturday night. And so we're, hanging out, just like kind of like sitting on the couch. And Peyton's upstairs, and we finally can have the conversation. It's around 10 o'clock at night. And she basically was putting up some resistance. And she was saying kind of what I just said. Like she feels kind of bad for him. It's she doesn't want things to get weird and it to be an awkward, things to get awkward, I guess, between us. And if you have kids and you have, a wife or a better half, a husband, and it's kind of like these situations come up, kind of like where, you feel one way and they feel one way. And it's like, it is a weird situation. And it's like, what do you do? And so, since I was fully prepared to have the conversation, and I've said this previously, even when you think that you're right, this is still all happening for you. So even though I had already made the decision, it was I was going to be assertive in the situation. I had already decided, but I wasn't expecting the resistance that my wife was giving me. And it's not like she always gives me resistance in these kinds of situations. There are plenty of times where these kinds of situations come up and she's like, do what you got to do, kind of thing. Or she agrees with me. But this time was different. She was really like, kind of like saying, like, almost to the point where it was like, all right, fine, here, I'll send you his number. Do it, if you think that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. I don't agree with it. And, and that was it. And so I was like, okay. And so that kind of like stopped me a little bit. I was like, all right, I definitely want to be assertive here, but at the same time, she's not on board and everything is happening for me. So what wisdom do I need to gain from this right now? And so I thought about it and I'm like, maybe I've already made the point. Like my subconscious mind knows that I don't want this in my experience, that I want something different. And it knows that I'm prepared to have this conversation. Like if push comes to shove, like I'm ready to have it. I would have it right now if he was here. But also, you know, why is she the person that I kind of like is my best friend and like we confide in each other? Why is she so against this if this is the right thing to do? And so I kind of like slept on it. I was like, all right, I was going to call him. It was like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, but I wanted to make sure I did it. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to sleep on it. And then I slept on it. And the next day, I didn't really think about it too much. Sunday night came and I was like, she's like, did you call? I said, no. I said, I haven't called him. I said, I'm just going to see how things go. Because now it didn't feel right. I was still wanted to have the conversation, but at the same time, the wisdom that I thought I was getting from that was not so fast. All right. Because, if you're supposed to move on something like that, it should feel like the red carpet, the seas are parting or a red carpet's being rolled out for you. Like everything should just kind of like just flow. And it wasn't. And then so Monday morning came and we went down to the bottom of the driveway and we're waiting for them to come across the street. Doesn't happen. They stayed on their side. And so Peyton and I were looking at each other like, wow, they're not coming. And so she got on the bus. Everything was fine. They were also talking to the people across the street at the same time, and they hadn't, the people had always been there across the street, but they were talking to the people across the street, and that's why they didn't come. And so Peyton comes home on Monday and she tells me about the dog. And I made the video about the dog that got hit by a car and, passed away. And it turns out that it was their dog. So it wasn't my daughter's friend and her stepdad. It wasn't their dog, but it was the people that they were talking to who live directly across the street. It was their dog. And so I guess what happened is they started talking about the dog, and all week they've been hanging out together. And so I'm not going as far as to say, the dog, my subconscious, put the dog in that kind of a situation so that it would take, me having to have this uncomfortable conversation. And that's how my subconscious like worked it all out. So I didn't have to have that conversation. But it all worked out. So the whole point is that it's I'm learning it's a balancing act. Okay. I keep saying, like, you have to know when to be assertive and when to detach. And it's back and forth, back and forth. And this was the first time where I actually had to be assertive. I was ready to be assertive. If it called, and it felt like it was calling me to be assertive, and I was fully prepared to be assertive, but then things just switched and I needed to detach. And so that's the first time where it's been like a combination of both. And so I just wanted to share that because, that was a completely new experience. And I felt like I wanted to also let you know how that whole thing played out. But now, it's one of those things where now I'm going to be ready. If these kinds of situations come up again, where it's like, okay, I'm ready to be assertive. And as long as I'm 100% fully prepared, and I was 100%, there wasn't like a shred in me that was like, oh, I really don't want to have this conversation. It was like, let's go. I'm ready. Where's the the sheet? Sign me in. Let me sign my name. I was ready to go. And so I'm just putting this together. My subconscious must have felt that and said, okay, this is as good as him going through with it. So we're not going to make him go through with it. And let's work, let's see if he can also detach. And so I was able to. And so that was awesome. And so I wanted to share that, and I hope that helps. All right. So, wow, that was a long story. So, Lions Den, all 6 people rocking and rolling this week. All 6 people have been checking in. Brent, Kate, Shadow Flare, Thankful, Lee Hodges, and Nora. And Kate shared a glitch from yesterday. Kate, I appreciate that. And as I said, any small wins, regardless of how small they are, please share them. Because as I talked about yesterday, it's about building on those wins. And, you lose track. Okay, sometimes, like I said, it could seem like nothing is happening, and then when it feels like nothing is happening, then you get those thoughts like, is this really working? And that's what the old person wants. He just wants that little sliver of doubt to sneak in, and then he gets you, and then you're back. Okay, it seems like I've been doing this a long time, but it's really only been 5 months. All right. And as I said, I don't know how I know, but I know it's going to be the full year. Okay. So I'm going to have to, and it's probably going to be the same for you, where you're going to have to face challenges all throughout the year, those same vicious circles that have been happening, the same negative people or the same negative experiences, where you just got to be prepared at that time of year. All right, so that's going to be it for today. Again, I hope it helped, and thank you for watching. I love you all. I'll see you tomorrow, day 134. Enjoy your night.